Well, summer is upon us. The 2021-22 school year is drawing to a close. Yay? And we already have some graduates, and we say congratulations to them. We're scrambling to get or stay caught up with a whole host of to-dos. And we're going from one kid's sporting event to another. Or from one concert to another. We're moving in different ways in our church as well. One initiative follows another. We're hoping that the allergy season is going to come to a close at some point. And all of this makes us out of breath. So since the last time I spoke to you from right here in this place, when we were reeling from the leaked Supreme Court's draft opinion which threatens women and girls everywhere in this nation, several states have further refined and introduced their own legislative measures which are even more draconian than what the Supreme Court has initiated. But not only are women and girls' rights being repealed, one rollback is merely the beginning of comprehensive rollbacks on rights and services and voting and opportunities for everyone. Since that time, when I last stood here, we've watched in horror how yet another mass shooting has targeted a black community, this time in Buffalo, New York. The supposed rationale for this heinous crime, outlined in an extensive manifesto, was the Great Replacement Theory, the foundation of which is white Christian nationalism and white supremacist ideology which has plagued the world and this country for centuries. White fear of being made redundant is vicious. This is a lot. This is a lot in addition to our hectic schedules, leaving us worn out. At least if we don't intersperse these realities with things that bring us joy. Connections with loved ones and time spent in prayer and centering. Laughter and music, reading a great book or spending time in nature. These breaks are very essential to our well-being, and they serve to renew us so that we can get back into the fray. But if you were to list all of these things to a friend and include all of the things that you're struggling with, the hurdles that obstruct your path, and if they would smile and say to you, "You got this," would that be encouraging? Would that be comforting? Or would that feel like you were being minimized? There are times when nothing in our soul feels like we've got any of this. And it's okay not only to admit that, but to boldly declare it. And thank you, Felicia, for boldly declaring that this morning. That we need to hear that. Amen. The text that Vicki read for us is a letter written by a church leader to a group of Jesus followers in Corinth. The church leader, who was the Apostle Paul, gives a report about the tough things that a sister congregation in the province of Macedonia was facing. And he doesn't begin that with saying, "You got this," or "They've got this." Not at all. There is a backstory. The Macedonian church had fierce troubles which pushed them right to their limits. Just imagine that. People portrayed in our scriptures are human. We're human, just as we are. And facing fierce trouble seems to be a part of the human experience. We're not explicitly told what these fierce troubles were, but it's strong language. It may have been personal, political, physical, relational circumstances that pressed in on them, just as they do on us. Poverty is mentioned, and it could be that. Or poverty could have come as a result of these fierce troubles. So we get the picture. Paul goes on with his report. His purpose is not to wallow in this fierce troubles report, but he also won't ignore it. He makes the additional observation that these fierce troubles expose the Macedonians' true colors. Uh-oh. Pressure tends to do that, doesn't it? In the case of the Macedonian church, despite fierce troubles, they were incredibly happy. And the happiness triggered an outpouring of true and generous gifts. That's right. Those were their colors. The people who were almost drowning in their troubles were incredibly happy and generous. And then, as if Paul expects a reader pushback, he said, truly, I was really there. I saw it with my own eyes. So he doesn't stop there. He writes about how they gave what they could. Well, actually, no. They gave over and above what they could afford, even begging to be allowed to give more to those in need. Okay, wait. Weren't they the ones in need? And here they are begging to help even more? Those who are pushed to the edge of troubles and experiencing poverty are actually begging for the privilege of doing and giving more. That's a rare occurrence, isn't it? Well, maybe not. Pearl Young, age 77, was one of the people who was shot and killed at the Tops supermarket in Buffalo, New York, 8 days ago. She ran a soup kitchen for 25 years. Even if it was nothing but soup and bread, whatever she could do, she would just always avail herself to help the people, her brother-in-law said. That's what she was noted for. Her life was full of giving. This Buffalo community's fierce troubles did not begin 8 days ago. They had been fighting this uphill battle for a long, long time. Fierce trouble. Outpouring of pure and generous gifts. Now, Pearl was not alone in her generosity. Read the brief biographies of those whose lives were cut short. Then there's Dr. Susan Dodd, who grew up in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. She was 16 in 1972 when she became pregnant, 1 year before Roe v. Wade. She was terrified. And with the help of her sister, they navigated the pre-Roe landscape to seek an abortion provider for an illegal abortion. Dr. Dodd speaks about how she gathered her courage to go to her first appointment with an OBGYN ever, to a complete stranger, to request an illegal abortion. Dr. Dodd went on to become an OBGYN physician herself in order to provide legal abortions. She experienced such opposition to her calling that on the recommendation of the FBI, she wore a bulletproof vest to work. She spoke of protesters at her clinic. They would take down her license plate and follow her. They would send her hate mail in the mail. It was done by mail in those days. She's retired now, Dr. Dodd, but she had hoped for abortion care to be included in women's health care, but instead, she now fears for the future of her professional field and those still in that profession, and more than that, for the patients needing care. Fierce troubles, indeed. What is causing some of our fierce troubles today? While we are not seeing women's and girls' rights being radically revoked in California yet, and we are not yet the targets of those pulling the triggers in mass shootings, the results of radicalization are still suffocating us. We're looking for ways to fight with others for their rights, for safety and security, knowing that we are not free until everyone is free. Our fierce troubles are just as valid as those of the early Macedonian Christian church. We face troubles as people amass more and more power for the purpose of controlling others. We face troubles as wide swaths of white people are being radicalized as extremists on extremist websites through the continual repetition of replacement theory rhetoric on cable TV and in white Christian nationalist churches. We may be surprised at how many churches in every community in America will repeat the same conspiratorial verbiage from the pulpit that led to the killing of 10 black people in Buffalo. You will likely not be surprised at how many people will repeat pro-life rhetoric, yet fail to adequately call for the safety of women and girls, even those who have experienced rape or incest, or having life-threatening medical conditions. They will not address climbing maternal mortality rates, or the lack of support mothers feeding children have, those who need a living wage, child care, health care. We won't hear that. This is 2022. Let me remind you that these are not political issues as much as they are issues of humanity. And they represent our call to fight with and for those who are targeted. Jesus calls them the least of these. How can we stand strong while fierce trouble rages, not being drowned or silenced in the process? How can we make a difference? The writer, Paul, would say, thanks for asking. He lays out why the Macedonians were able to do the impossible, be incredibly happy, while wading through their own incredible, deep troubles. Paul says that before they were able to respond to the hardships as they did, they had given themselves unreservedly to God and to us. And the us there refers to the broader church community and its leadership. In other words, they had mastered letting go, trusting God to carry them when they were powerless to do just that, opening their arms and their hearts to others even in their struggles. Have you ever been there? You did everything within your power to change a situation, a health challenge, a financial roadblock, a ruptured relationship with a loved one, and nothing worked. It brought you to the end, exhausted, helpless, feeling completely defeated. That's one of the points of invitation in your life. The divine invitation to let go, hand over all of your tired maneuvering and your endless thought processes and action plans. God offers you rest and rejuvenation. We repeatedly encounter this invitation in the scriptural narrative through our faith ancestors. In the process of rest, then, God also offers the release from destructive paths of guilt and blame and shame and anger, even hostility. Soon, you'll be called back into the fray, but take the invitation to let go when it's offered. You can be sure that giving yourself to God unreservedly will have profound effect on every part of your life. Specific outcomes are not guaranteed, but transformation is over time. What happens may astound others around you, just as the Corinthians were astounded at what the Macedonians were able to do in the midst of enormous hardship. Paul gives the Corinthian readers more detail about the Macedonian experience. And just like you or me, when we hear a story, it impacts us doubly. We're heartened, we're motivated, and we realize that we can learn from those who've mastered what we still hope to achieve. And hearing about others' hardship and struggle sparks empathy. This is what Paul is hoping will happen with the church in Corinth. He's quite bold about his motive. He states, the reason I'm telling you all of this is that you will finish what you started. He doesn't tell us what that was, but they would have known. Paul is hoping that the Macedonians' enthusiasm will bring out the best in the Corinthians. That's a bold approach. And then the call to action is, and I quote from the scripture, "So here's what I think," says Paul. "The best thing you can do right now is to finish what you started and not let those good intentions grow stale. Your heart's been in the right place all along. You've got what it takes to finish it up, so go to it." That's Paul's way of saying, you got this. He knows that they can get it done, finish what they've started. And so his "you got this" is quickly followed with, "So go get it done." Paul wasn't one to be cryptic. He left no one wondering what he might have meant. He says, you've got what it takes. Once your commitment is clear, take action and do what you can. Work side by side, shoulder to shoulder, do what you can with your fellow brothers and sisters. One person can do more, one can do less. No one is superior and no one is inferior. Give generously so the work can go on. That's what he asks of them. We're in this together, he says. So what does that mean for us in the rollback of rights and great replacement theory era? It means that we look to others for examples of how to rise up in spite of fierce troubles. It means that we remember what our intentions were in the first place and then finish. We can't let these intentions and the foundations of faith elements grow stale. It means we resist the urge to bask in our seemingly safe place here in this state at this moment. We have to be realistic. It may not always be this way. And it means we give generously, sacrificially, looking for any way in which we can support the good cause. So to be clear, I will say it again, fighting for our and others' rights, protecting those who are viciously being targeted, calling out those who foment white supremacy in any form and in any place, and elevating minority populations is not primarily a political fight. These are issues of humanity. And our call as Jesus followers is to fight with and for those who are targeted. You got this. We've got this, so let's get on with it. 2 weeks ago, I asked for emails to flood my inbox, not with completely developed plans of how we will engage on behalf of others, but with a willingness to be present, to say, I'm ready to think, to pray, to brainstorm, to try. And that invitation is still open. You got this. We've got this. So let's get to it.